Hello, everyone. We're actually here with Suzanne in her place, and this is going to be a picture and sound. So, Suzanne, this is Easter 2023. So, what should we know about Easter?
Um, Unfortunately, Easter has some of the same drawbacks as Christmas does because too many children are made by the parents who always make the first move to mislead the children into believing in a non-existent character, so that the uh, the unreal gets more publicity than the fact.
So, you're not a fan of the Easter Bunny?
No, because um, I sometimes see signs saying have breakfast with the Easter Bunny, have your picture taken, but the bunny itself is an average size adult in a costume. Maybe could be about at least this tall, and that's not the natural size for a rabbit.
So, is your main objection that it's too big? Like you like a smaller bunny?
Um, it's wrong to mislead the children into too much of a fantasy when the parents will turn the tables later on and force the children to be concerned with reality only. Um, Now, the real meaning of Easter is to welcome back spring, but we're also welcoming back uh, someone from the dead,
And tell us who that is. Ah,
Jesus.
of course, of course.
He was crucified for all our wrongdoings, but that wasn't the end. He rose up.
So, do you think instead of bunny breakfast to the bunny, we should have breakfast with Jesus?
Um, you shouldn't have breakfasts or having pictures taken with a fictional character. You've got to use something that represents the real thing. If a um, if a yard or perhaps perhaps the lawn of a church has a statue of a risen Christ, children should have their pictures taken alongside that. Um, in welcoming spring, back in the Middle Ages, when faith and religion dominated all thoughts, um, there was the custom at the Easter Vigil to baptize and or confirm some new converts to Christianity. Uh, the candidates wore white robes for this, and then since the Easter Vigil was always at nighttime, the next morning, which was Easter Day, the newly processed Christians would still wear their white robes and and parade in a circle around the center of town, so that the whole populace could extend their congratulations. Um, and this is actually where the Easter parade got started. The general populace didn't want to just look at a handful of newly processed converts. They wanted to get all dressed up too. So
Hmm.
there you have your Easter parade, and that's why the Easter parade is not at all like your average parade. There are no marching bands, floats, politicians or beauty queens in cars, giant balloons, or any of the typical entries that you see in an average parade. An Easter parade consists of citizens wearing supposedly new clothes to show themselves off in dressing up to welcome spring.
Okay. Where did the hats come from? I noticed people wear a lot of Easter hats.
Oh, Easter bonnets, right?
Bonnets.
Yeah, there's a song, Easter Parade, that mentions a bonnet, but I don't care for bonnets. When it comes to the Easter Vigil at my church, at this time, I'll be wearing a white mini dress with red and green cross-stitch embroidery and a red civilian skirt under it and a wreath of red roses that I made myself.
Okay. And then what's the symbolism of that?
The symbolism of what?
Or your outfit? Is there something behind it? Or just a design?
Oh, it isn't brand new, if that's what you mean.
Oh, okay. But you created it.
I made it.
Okay. So what was your thinking behind it? Was something that inspired it? Is there any symbolism in red roses or white cross stitches?
No, it's showing off colors other than pastels. Even so, some people still wear strong colors. I thought I wanted people to see it because of the hand-stitched embroidery.
Was there anything behind the crown of roses? Or no?
No, the crown of roses fits right on the crown of my head.
I mean, as an idea behind it, not literally. I
The
understand your head's
red
behind
roses match the skirt and at least half of the embroidery.
Okay.
I think it's interesting, though, that you would wear roses in a crown because roses do have thorns on their, on the vines. And Jesus did have the crown of thorns
That's
symbology.
right. He did have a crown of thorns.
So,
But see, our choir director says this time for the Easter Vigil, dress up festively. Maybe some other choir members will go all out, but the director put his thumb down on bonnets. So they shouldn't wear any complex headgear, which is why a wreath of roses is festive, and yet it's simpler.
Now, what's his reasoning behind banning headgear? Does he have something against bonnets? Doesn't like them personally, or is it a functional reason behind it?
Bonnets?
Well, you just told me that the rector of your choir said no bonnets.
Well, because they're out of style. It's too complex a piece of headgear to go along sensibly with the serious and joyful religious service we're doing.
Let's see. Oh, well, that's interesting. We learned something about Christmas. Easter parades. I didn't know.
I was in one in 2004 in Ocean City, but we didn't process up and down the boardwalk. It was inside the Music Pier Auditorium, and I don't think there were more than about 20 entrants altogether. There were grown-ups. There were also some very young children. Different people took turns going up onto the stage and exhibiting themselves. Unfortunately, I won nothing. When my ensemble was very beautiful, hand-stitched embroidery and some satin stitch. It was mostly cross-stitch, but there was also some satin stitch. The big drawback to the one Easter parade I was in was that the judges made no considerations for self-made garments as opposed to purchased garments. So I asked, is that the way it always goes here? And they said, yes. Well, then I'm not going to do another Easter parade unless or until the judges give some consideration to self-made garments. And since then, I haven't found the site for another Easter parade that would be more practical.
Yeah, well, I think so few people make their own garments these days that you'd have very limited entrance.
Well, it was still wrong on the judge's part to exclude self-made garments as worthy of scrutiny.
Well, maybe they should have offered you some extra points if you made your own.
What prizes were given out? Do you remember?
I think small home appliances, corsages for the girls and the women, and for the men, I think ties.
But did they have was it categories? Was it like most original, or was it?
I don't know whether they had any categories like that. I saw no signs.
So it's more
when people were called up, they were not called on behalf of any particular category.
More participant awards.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that the only Easter parade you ever did, or you did something else?
It's the only one I ever did.
Mm-hmm. So what else can you share with us about Easter that we don't know?
You have to remember that Jesus' resurrection coincided with the return of spring to the Holy Land. And because he was God, God's son, he had the power to rise from the dead.
And how do you feel about Punxsutawney Phil? Is that the guy's name?
That's the wrong holiday, and that's in the midpoint of winter.
Well, it's supposed to tell us about spring, right?
That's supposed to tell us how many more weeks of winter we'll get. Although I never understood the methodology behind that.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Actually, Groundhog Day started on February 2nd because it's exactly 40 days after Christmas. See, the law in Jesus' time was that among the Jews, every firstborn child that was a boy was to be taken to the Temple of Jerusalem to be presented to God when the baby was 40 days old. So in time, people distorted the meaning of the light and the holiday and left it to an animal that could not be entrusted to emerge from his burrow at just the right time. I'm sure that Punxsutawney Phil himself is not a trained animal who stays inside that tree stump all year. He's maintained and nurtured somewhere else and then brought over to Punxsutawney just in time for February 2nd.
Right. So, do you like groundhogs? Do you like groundhogs, or do you prefer cats?
No.
You don't like them?
He brings back too many bad memories, especially how my father was so zealous about my being concerned with reality only, and so did my mother, although not to the extremes that my father did.
But how does that relate to the groundhog?
What?
Well, you say you don't like them because of what your parents mentioned to you or brought up, but how does that relate to what happened with the groundhog?
What happened to the rabbit?
The groundhog, you say you don't like them because of something your parents did or said.
I just never paid attention to all the Groundhog Day hysteria.
Mm-hmm. And did your parents pay attention to that?
No, they never bore down on me about Groundhog Day. But I'm saying that Easter has some of the same drawbacks as Christmas because the children are misled into going for a being that doesn't exist. Sometimes they're pressured to be extra good to earn the right to Easter baskets full of goodies. But we also have to remember the real reason for Easter is to welcome back spring and to welcome back Jesus from the dead.
Okay, well that's is that a good way to close this Easter reminder little episode? Or do you want to add something else?
As spring goes on, a lot of Catholic children prepare for first communions and confirmations. So that's more spring focused on something Jesus wanted us to do.
Okay. So in closing, I hope everybody is paying attention to what Suzanne just told us and skip the bunny. We'll go for the Jesus. All right. Well, thank you, Suzanne, for this Easter special.
Yeah.
And we'll talk soon.
Mm-hmm.